I'm Tracy Frisch. I'm with the Zero Waste Planning Committee of Warren and Washington County. We're a citizens group with some local local officials on it, or primarily citizens. And since composting is a very important part of reducing the amount of trash and other waste that we start and go to an incinerator or landfill, we're very strongly in support of composting. And Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency has very generously offered to mentor Warren County should the county decide to move forward on this. And this is the first step to learn about their operation. They got started, how they manage it, and they're very willing to answer our questions. So so I'll just say I'll just tell you a little bit about how this meeting is going to be run. First, we'll hear from Angelina. How do you say your last name?
Peony. Thank you, Tracy.
Peony, who's the recycling coordinator for Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency, as well as Charlie Whitaker, who is the operations manager, and Tim Rose, who's the executive director, who will have to step out during part of this meeting. Claudia Bramer, one of the supervisors from the city of Glens Falls, will be facilitating the second part of the meeting where people are asking questions, making comments. And we are going to give elected officials and local elected and other government officials the opportunity to speak during that part of the meeting, and others, we are asking you to pose your questions in the chat room. And if you have problems doing that, you can email me. I've shared my email with everyone. So, and I will read it, or Claudia will read the question. So during the presentation, I'm going to mute everyone except the presenters so that we don't have ambient noises like the car that passed me. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to unmute Angelina, and I'm going to unmute you. And okay, I think we are set. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for inviting us to speak to your group that you've convened here. I speak on behalf of the agency that it's always a pleasure to connect with other municipal leaders who are looking to start composting or start the information gathering process to learn about composting. And the agency is always very happy to share our process and our story and how we went from a small compost pilot project. I think we did about 50 tons of food waste in that first year to presently we're a fully scaled organics recovery facility, and we processed about 4,600 tons of food waste last year. So we're always very proud to share our story and answer any questions that our peers or other municipalities might have. As the recycling coordinator at the agency, I joined in January of 2019. My role primarily is to coordinate the countywide education program around recycling and waste reduction. I complete a lot of administrative tasks like grant writing, completing their annual recycling and composting reports, and largely act as a liaison for the agency, connecting with waste haulers, local businesses, schools, residents, to connect them with useful information. So it's my pleasure to spend some time with you all today, and I prepared a modified presentation. I did a similar presentation at the New York State Organics Summit in 2019. So I've kind of added a few slides since then, and would like to jump right in. I'd also welcome our Executive Director, Timothy Rose, or our Director of Operations, Charlie Whitaker. If you either have any opening remarks before I get started, I'd welcome you to jump in now as well.
Well, this is Tim Rose speaking. I would just like to welcome everybody Thank you for including us in this, and we're more than happy to answer any questions you have. I know both Angelina and Charlie love to give tours of the agency and really showcase what we've done here, and a lot of credit goes to both of them for making this a very successful program. So I think you're going to learn a lot by listening to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And I'm going to jump right in here because we've prepared a lot of content for you today. We always like to start with some background information about UCRRA, or UCRA as we call ourselves, and the scope of our services. So we'll start with that. We're going to talk a little bit about our current program so you can get a sense of the partnerships that we have, the types of materials or the types of feedstocks that we handle on our site. And I'll also touch briefly on our compost sales, which we're really, really proud of. We're going to talk about our pilot project in 2012 and the process for how the agency launched that program. We're going to talk about EASP, which is extended aerated static pile method of composting, which is the technology that we use to this day. We're going to talk about the benefits of EASP and how exactly it works. We're going to share some environmental benefits of composting. We'll have a commentary about the financial commitments the agency has made. And we're going to talk about some, what I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we will talk about managing odors, nuisances, and contamination. Those are the three big concerns that a lot of people have about starting a composting program. So we'll touch on those as well. We're going to aim to spend about 35 or 40 minutes on this content, and then we're going to leave plenty of time to address any questions that you might have. And as Tracy mentioned, you can use that chat box feature by hovering over your screen and finding that icon to type in your questions as we go, and we'll try to answer as many of those as possible. So about UCRRA, for over 30 years, we've been financing, implementing, and managing solid waste materials on behalf of Ulster County. UCRRA is a solid waste authority. We're a public benefit corporation, and we operate 2 solid waste transfer stations in Kingston and New Paltz. You can see our mission statement there and some icons that kind of demonstrate or illustrate the scope of our services. For municipal solid waste in Ulster County, we have what's called flow control law, which means that all waste that's generated in the county, all municipal solid waste, must come to one of our facilities. So last year, to give you a sense of that, we managed about 130,000 tons of municipal solid waste at both of our facilities. Construction and demolition debris, recycling, organics, those materials are not required to come to us. Only municipal solid waste is covered in the flow control mandate. I'll also just mention here that there are 24 municipalities in Ulster County, and that there are 19 municipal recycling drop-off centers that we service with dual stream recycling and with municipal solid waste collection as well. So those are drop centers throughout the county that are operated by each of the towns. They're not operated by UCRA, but just to give you a sense that residents do have a lot of options for recycling and waste disposal in the county. They can have a curbside collection program where a private company would pick up their trash and recycling, or they can use a town drop center and bring their waste and recyclables. We operate a dual stream recycling center at our Kingston facility. So dual stream recycling is where your paper and your cardboard is managed separately from your commingled containers like plastic, glass, and metal. So that's open to commercial clients, and largely from the town transfer stations, we manage and sort that material on our site in Kingston. Organics recovery, we'll talk a lot about that, so I'll leave that brief, but our composting operation is located at our Kingston facility. We also have free electronics recycling. Typically that's Monday through Friday, and that program is open to all residents, regardless of their Ulster County residency status. And it's also open to businesses with less than 50 employees and nonprofits with less than 75 employees. We have a free household hazardous waste collection program, which we offer 3 times per year in April, July, and October. And we're very proud to sponsor that program and offer that as well. And then lastly, we have a pretty extensive outreach education program. We have 2 full-time staff that deal with our countywide recycling and composting education program, a wide suite of services I'll touch more on later, but we are available for public presentations, facility tours. We host workshops and go to community centers and provide a lot of promotion about our programs. This next slide is going to show you an aerial view of our facility in Kingston. Again, this is our larger facility, and what you're looking at here in the bottom left corner is our vehicle maintenance facility. In the bottom center of this photo, you can see our solid waste tipping floor. It's an enclosed building where the waste is consolidated into tractor trailer vehicles and then exported for disposal. Our waste in Ulster County goes largely to the Seneca Meadows landfill in Syracuse. Our material recovery facility is that very large building at the top center of this photo, and directly behind that is the organics recovery facility, or our composting operation. That is the same footprint that we started with in 2012, and it's the same site that we're currently operating. This photo is a little bit older from Google Earth, so you can't really see a lot of the zones that are active there, but I like to include this slide to give you a scope of the size of the operation. We have about 10 administrative staff that work with the UCRRA and about 30 operations staff that work between both of the facilities. And in regard to composting, there's about 2 core operations staff that are involved with operations of the composting facility. And I would welcome Tim or Charlie if you wanted to add any content there about the scope of our services or our site. Please feel free.
Angie, Angie, I think you're doing fine. I don't personally have anything to add. You know our layout, you know our operation. I think you're doing fine. Unless there's a specific question you have for me, Ange, or anybody, I think you're doing fine.
Okay, great. Well, please feel free to tag team and jump in if I miss anything. And then I'll also just say on this slide too that our facility is independent of Ulster County. Even though we have Ulster County in our name, we are a solid waste authority. We are financially self-sustaining, and we're independent of the county. We have the 10 administrative staff. Obviously, we have an executive director and a 5-member board of directors, and it's our board members that are appointed by the Ulster County legislature. So let's talk about composting. You know, following our mission in sustainable materials management, the agency identified this local need to reduce the waste stream as much as possible and try to manage food waste or organics in the most sustainable and economical way possible. And that's why in 2012, they launched a pilot project to demonstrate the feasibility, the environmental benefits, and the economic impact of a large-scale composting system. Back in 2012, as is still the case today, solid waste tipping fees are high, and you know, dealing with the reality that many landfills are reaching or nearing capacity within our next 10-year solid waste planning period or 20-year solid waste planning period. Those were major considerations to why the agency sought to look for ways to reduce the waste stream. And composting really emerged as recycling's next frontier, and I really believe that still to this day that composting is the next frontier for recycling. So our board of directors embarked on a collaborative planning process to try to understand what all of the options were for composting. We did a lot of networking with our industry peers who were successfully composting to gain knowledge about that. And they wrote a formal business plan. And throughout this process, it became clear there was not only a need to do this, but there was community interest to do it, and there was incentive to do it. So we'll talk about all of those things to this day, and how that played a role in our composting program to this day. And there were no composting programs in the Mid-Hudson region when the agency started this program. And still to this day, UCRA remains the largest public permitted composting site accepting food scraps throughout the Mid-Hudson region. So we accept food waste from neighboring counties, from as far as New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Connecticut even. So we're really proud to pave the way, so to speak, in the Mid-Hudson region for composting. So how does it all work? We involve commercial partners in our composting program. We call them our partners in composting. And basically it's a 3-step process to become involved with us. When a restaurant, a business, a school, or a hauler expresses interest in our program, we want to meet with them as early as possible to get to know them, get to know what their collection program might be like. They complete a survey that is like a questionnaire that helps us understand, okay, how much food might you be bringing? How often might you be bringing it? How are you going to collect it? What's your plan to train your participants? What's your plan for education? So those questions really help us understand our role in assisting them and offering them support, whether that might be through posters or stickers or even training programs that we might be able to offer them to see their program be extremely successful. We like to include a tour of our facility as part of their onboarding process. So not only do we want to get to know them, but we want them to get to know us and our process and the types of items we accept and the types of items we don't accept, so we can really start to build a good relationship with that partner. And once we're comfortable with their plan to educate people and to launch their program, they would be able to use our facility. No appointment necessary to come and drop off their food scraps. And I will say that all food waste must be delivered to our site. So the agency does not do any hauling services at all to go and pick up the food and transport it to our site. And I think from the start of this program, we identified that as one of the cost savings to make this program feasible. So we don't do any hauling. And from there, they become a partner in our program, and our relationship doesn't end there. We have an ongoing relationship with our partners in composting to help them troubleshoot any problems that might come up, or if they have new staff in their kitchens or in their cafeterias, we can stay connected with them and support them in a lot of different ways. And I've clipped here a picture of a new booklet that we've developed. So we have a 12-page guide that we provide our partners in composting. And I can link that for Tracy if anyone's interested to follow up and take a look at that. So I mentioned everything must be delivered to our site. So everything is weighed in and out, and all payments to the agency are based on the weight. So for yard waste, that's our primary bulking agent or our primary carbon source. We charge $40 per ton. That second picture there is the food scraps. You might also hear me refer to that as organics or source separated organics. We charge $20 per ton upon delivery, and there is no minimum load fee for that. So there's no minimum fee. And then that third photo there is our compost product, which we sell in bulk out of our Kingston location, and we are able to sell that for $30 per ton. It's available in bulk only, but we will load your vehicle if you're coming in a truck or a trailer hitch. We sell to landscapers, to farmers, to hobby gardeners. Even though we only offer it in bulk, we see a lot of success in the compost sales, and we're really, really proud of that because there are a lot of benefits to composting, which I'll show in a couple minutes. So this is a picture of our scale. Again, the scale is the heartbeat of the whole operation because we're able to track everything as it arrives to our site or as it leaves our site, and we're able to make transactions based on weight of that material. And I included a nice photo there of someone who's unloading or delivering food scraps. This particular load actually came to us from New Jersey, and I just love this photo because you can see all the personal protective equipment that this person is wearing. They're wearing a hard hat, they're wearing a mask, they're wearing gloves, they're wearing fluorescent clothing, so they're able to safely unload that food into our receiving area. So we like to see that, and we always meet that person as they're making deliveries. No matter what load is coming to the agency, every single load is actually visually supervised and inspected, so we can assure that we're not receiving any contaminants and that people are working safely to unload their vehicles at our site. This is showing a poster that we recently had developed to show you the types of items we would accept and the types of things we consider to be contaminants in composting. So because we're an industrial scale composting operation, we are able to take all food scraps, including meat, bones, dairy products, grease, small amounts of grease. Those things aren't really an issue because of the large scale of our operation. If you're familiar a little bit with composting, in a backyard composting situation, you wouldn't want to include some of those things that may be attractive to nuisances or vectors, but we can manage them safely in our facility. And then you can also see some of the common compost contaminants, which we'll talk more about later, but you do run that risk, right, of having other types of food service items get mixed in at the point of collection with food scraps, things like rubber gloves or twist ties or hairnets when we're talking about kitchens or cafeterias. So we provide these posters to our partners in composting so they can display them in their collection areas and really communicate to everyone involved. We try to keep it, as you can see, very colorful, very easy to read, easy to understand at a glance. And we made our phone number very, very big, so you can always call us if you have any other questions about that. And our commitment to the quality of our compost is so important because we sell this product that we manufacture. We offer this compost, as I mentioned, to farmers, to landscapers, to gardeners. We're very proud to offer it at such an affordable price, and we sell a lot of compost. We are proud partners of the U.S. Composting Council. We actually participate in their certified compost program. So our compost is tested quarterly by a certified soil science lab, and all of those technical data sheets are available online for the public so that they can see what's the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of our compost. If they want to know what the pH is or what the phosphorus content is, or if they have any concerns about food waste being the main feedstock, they can look at the compost technical data sheets and they can see that our product is certified and it's of an extremely high quality. And compost has many benefits. As you can see, it adds nutrients, it adds soil organisms, which reduce the use to use pesticides and fertilizers. It can aid in suppressing plant diseases. It can retain moisture. So the list goes on and on of all the great uses for compost. So even though it's not a specialty blended product, it's just pure compost, there is a very high demand for compost sales, especially in our region. So how did we get here? Back in 2012, starting this pilot project, it was created through a permit modification to our current site. So we were allowed to accept up to 500 tons per year of source separated organics back in this pilot project. There were some basic logistical steps involved in launching that project. So we'll kind of walk through what some of those were. And this is a little bit boiled down, but I wanted to give you a scope of what these steps look like for us and what it might look like to replicate this type of program. Gauging community interest was really important. You want to make sure that there are stakeholders and partners that would participate in this program. So I know locally the city of Kingston here conducted some surveys during this time. The agency recycling coordinator conducted a lot of surveys during this time to gauge what the interest was among the business community and among the haulers in our area. We networked with leaders in composting. So Onondaga County Resource Recovery Agency has a very large-scale composting operation they were our mentor through this process. So we worked really closely with them to understand what their process was, and that was integral to the success of our program, and quite frankly is still integral to have that type of mentor relationship with another peer. And we were able to learn logistics and get a sense of all the options. And from there, the acting recycling coordinator developed a formal business plan for how we were going to launch this program. What were the operational considerations? What would the finances look like? What was the market for selling composting, right? And how are we going to do that outreach to involve restaurants and cafes and schools? So that was all really important to develop as part of that process. And we worked really closely with DEC, who are our regulators, here in Region 3, to make sure that we were going to plan a system that would comply with all the laws and that we really understood what that would be. Ultimately, we worked with O2 Compost to design and implement the composting program. So they provided an extensive staff training. They sourced all of the equipment and all the aeration technology that we would need, and we were able to do a grand opening, which was really important to us to showcase the program, invite the press, have as many public new journalists and TV stations as possible to help launch the program and work with haulers. So this was a really long process, to my understanding, for the agency, but it all was essential in the success and the longevity of the program. So we use what's called the extended aerated static pile method of composting. And I want to first share a couple general thoughts about EASP, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about how it works. Essentially, what this technology entails is there is a network of perforated pipes, or a manifold of pipes that are connected to a blower. And that blower is automated to a timer to come on and force air through the pile every 5 minutes, for 5 minutes every 15 minutes. And there are a lot of benefits to using this automated technology. The material doesn't have to be manually turned, so that reduces operating costs because you don't have to go in and turn it the entire windrow. Once that material's on an active zone, it can stay there for 30 days. So that was a huge consideration. This process can handle large volumes of food very quickly. And the fact that it's extended means we can stack these areas side by side. And we can add more zones if we need to. We can take zones off if we don't need them. And because we can never predict how much food is being delivered in a given day, but it's coming very consistently, the EASP method is really optimized for what our needs were at that time, and that's why we chose it. And this method also really aids in controlling odors because of that forced air element, and it was very feasible for us to launch this program. It's the technology we continue to use to this day. So this slide's going to give us a little bit more of the technical stuff of how this actually works. So food scraps are delivered to our site, and they're blended with wood chips in a designated area in a mixing bay, and we blend in those wood chips 3 to 1. So for every 1 cubic yard of food, we're going to add 3 cubic yards of wood chips to control the moisture and bulk that material up. Once it's mixed, the mixture will go into an aeration zone where it will sit there for 30 days, and it will reach very high temperatures throughout that process. In fact, it will be 131 to 165 degrees. That's called the process to further reduce pathogens. So because it's extremely hot, we can handle meat, bones, dairy products. Because it's extremely hot, we have no concerns about weed seeds or possible like plant residues that maybe they were, you know, they had a pest problem with the wood waste that's going in there. Those are not concerns because we maintain these really high temperatures. And then after 30 days, that compost is removed from the aeration zone and it is laid in large piles to cure or rest or mature, and it sits for another 60 days. And during that time, the compost will cool as it ages. Some of the biology involved in composting will continue its process and make sure that the end product is suitable for use, so that the pH will go down as it ages, the temperature of the compost will go down as it ages, and the end result is the finished compost that we then screen and we sell in bulk. So that's a little technical input there. And then I have another chart on the next slide, just showing that same process again in another way. So step 1, it's delivered. Step 2, we mix it with wood chips. Step 3, we put it on the aeration pad for 30 days. Step 4, after 30 days, we take it off the pad and it ages for 60 days. Step 5, we screen it. And step 6, we sell it. And I would welcome you, Charlie's our Director of Operations, if you have any comments to add here about that process. Or I know this is a little boiled down, but I think it's easy to understand in this kind of step-by-step way.
Hey, Ange.
Yeah.
So a couple things I wrote down that you covered a lot of stuff, and I just want to break it down a little bit clearer. You were very clear, by the way, but some things that people understand. So one of the things, Ange, I wanted to expand on was that 3-to-1 ratio. Can you talk a little bit about the way the food comes in, and that varies depending on how wet or dry the product is, and odors that are associated with the arriving food?
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlie, for pointing that out, because there is a recipe for composting, right? 3 parts wood waste to 1 part food waste. But, you know, food is a complicated material. It is very high in moisture. It's very wet. Depending on how long it's been sitting in a cafeteria or how long it's been sitting on a truck or sitting in a bin, it could, you know, start to rot or start to decompose. So we do get deliveries where the food waste is very, very wet and it has to be handled immediately. So there are times, you know, depending on the look of the load, we might add in extra wood chips, or we might lay down wood chips and dump the food on top of that material to soak up that moisture and handle it in a sanitary manner. I'm going to talk extensively about odors a little bit later, but you bring up a good point, Charlie, that you really have to be adaptable. And what I want to comment and add there is that a lot of this comes with experience and doing it and seeing different loads. And the best way to learn is to just do it. I mean, you could read technical reports until your eyes fall out, but the best way to really learn is to look at a site and see how it's working and to just jump in and do it. And I hope that addresses your comment, Charlie.
It does, Ange. I just wanted to make sure that they know sometimes it's really, really wet, and sometimes you have to add 4 yards to 1 yard. Sometimes it's really, really dry and you add only a couple of yards, or you wait till some wet food comes in and mix with it. So that did answer it. The second thing, Ange, I wanted, since we're talking about you know, the mixing of food waste, after it's mixed and after it's on the blowers, I'd like if you could talk a little bit about the wet conditions, right? And the fact that ours is not covered, right? And also sometimes we have to adjust the timers, increasing it. So from a 5:15 to a 10 and 20 and then back again, depending on the temperatures and how often we do check temperatures. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Certainly. As part of our permitting requirements, you have to actually the operator has to keep a logbook that shows that you have taken temperatures on a daily basis, and you have a log of the age of the material, how long it has been sitting in different zones. And again, that's all part of our permitting requirements and our reporting requirements with DEC. So that is very, very important. And I think I have a couple other slides in here coming up that address how the material is layered on the zones. So we keep talking about a zone, and I want to give you a sense of what that means. So again, we have a system of perforated pipes. So these are pipes that have holes drilled in them at a certain interval, and they're connected to a manifold of pipes that are connected to the blower. So the blower will cycle on automatically for either 5 minutes, every 15 minutes. Sometimes, as Charlie said, if we're having a really wet load, or if we're having problems with odors and we need to be adaptable, we might change that aeration cycle up or down depending on the material. So this is basically the configuration of what one zone looks like, and each zone can hold about 200 cubic yards of material. And I think up next I have a picture of the zone being constructed, so you can see what this kind of looks like. Directly on top of the pipes, there's about 1 foot 8 inches of wood chips, and that is what we call a biofilter. And that bed of wood chips is a porous base that's going to allow that forced air to move through the pile in a way that's going to disperse the air and optimize the composting process. So we'll put that mixture on top of this porous base on top of the pipes, and then we're actually going to cap that whole pile off with more wood chips or more finished compost. So that's a second biofilter to conceal moisture in the pile and to further reduce any odors that you might have. So during our pilot project, this is the configuration of the zones that we were able to construct. So we were able to build 5 zones stacked continuously side by side in this way. And again, each zone could hold about 200 cubic yards of material. I want to talk about our bulking agents. You've heard me say that a few times now, and I just want to go into more detail about what I mean by that. Our bulking agents are the woody, porous yard waste that we are mixing in with the food scraps to bulk it up, create airspace in that pile, and supply carbon for the biological process of composting. We source wood chips, or we source yard waste. As I said, it was delivered to our site for $40 per ton. We have built a lot of partnerships with local town transfer stations to partner with them. So we can, we have a mobile grinding machine, so we can grind their wood waste into wood chips for a nominal fee, or if they want to provide us with the wood chips, we waive that fee if they can deliver the wood chips back to us. So this is our primary bulking agent, and it's really important that you have a lot of wood chips on site, especially when you're managing large volumes of food waste continuously. We like to have, I would say at least 100, 200, 300 cubic yards of wood chips on site at all times. And the wood chips, that supply might go down faster in the winter because we don't have wood waste. So you always want to have wood chips. We only accept yard waste that's intact, meaning we won't take wood chips if we didn't chip it ourselves. And that just speaks to our commitment to the quality of our finished product. We want to know what that original material was to make sure we don't get any painted, stained, pressure treated wood or anything like that. So we want to chip it ourselves rather than get loads of already chipped material. This is going to show just a little slideshow. Hopefully this will work for us. This was the construction of our pilot project. So you can see this was the area where we had to construct a pad underneath. So we poured a pad area. Here are the pipes being delivered. We had to drill the holes in our pipes ourselves. All the equipment's housed in these little dog houses, as we call them, to protect the technology from rain and weather. So there's the blower attached to the timer. You can see that we have a utility pole servicing all of these aeration zones to make sure that they run continuously. Here, our staff is preparing one of the aeration zones for the pilot project, spreading out those wood chips to create that biofilter. And there is the mixing bay where we will receive food waste. A very large stockpile of wood chips there you can see. We also divert pallets as part of our program, which I'll talk about in a second. And these are just some pictures of our great grand opening there when the first day that we started. So you can see very well received. There's Terry Lieback from DEC speaking. There's Peter Moon, our consultant who designed the program. There's Charlie, he's our director of operations with a big smile that day, and the very first load that we received.
Hey, Ange.
Yes, Charlie.
So one of the things I want to talk about is the pipes, right? So when you're putting the manifolds together with the pipes, the holes, you want to talk about where the holes are placed. They don't go up, they go down. And the reason why that is because it restricts the airflow due to the holes filling up. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So the holes are drilled in the pipe at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So the holes are drilled on the sides of the pipe, and that is to optimize the way the air is going to disperse through the pile, and also so that any fine or granular material doesn't clog those holes or get stuck inside the pipe. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, we also put them upside down, Ange, so they're facing toward the ground.
Yep.
And the other thing I want to talk about, the dog houses is really good. And the other thing about, I want you to touch on is really important is that, so once you really when you invest into this, right, with yourself, right, and the haulers that are bringing the waste in and the people who are buying the compost, it's really important to keep the operation going. Things do break down. And we keep blowers and timers and all that stuff on the shelf as backup because things break down. So I wanted to touch on that. We never run out of blowers. We do rebuild them. So they are expensive. So I wanted to touch a little bit on that. Also, Ange, when we go back up to the other area, when we start talking, when you were talking about 3 to 1, I want to talk a little bit about the deer composting that we do separately. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. Thank you, Charlie. And yes, we did add in 2016 when we expanded the program. You're getting a little ahead of me, Charlie, but when we expanded the program in 2016, we added a mortality composting portion to our site. So we are able to also compost deer carcasses that come to us from Pestmaster, like when a deer is hit on the side of the road, they can bring us those carcasses, and we manage them in a separate zone that's completely separate from the food waste. And the finished product that we make from that we use on site. We don't offer that product for sale, but just a really important piece of commentary that mortality composting is also a very large piece of reducing the waste stream, and the DEC really was excited that we were going to include something like that. We do about 10 to 12 tons of mortality composting or deer carcasses every year, and we use the exact same methodology that we're describing here.
And Mange, one of the things I want to add about the composting of roadkill is the fact that it's right from a regulation standpoint, right? Shouldn't be going to landfills and it shouldn't be going to incinerators. Back in the early 90s, it was a huge problem with roadkill. Nobody knew what to do with it. So which I don't think I've ever talked to you about, but I spent a lot of time with all the superintendents at the DPWs, and we came up with a way of just finding remote areas that were safe, that people couldn't get hurt, and we would dig holes and put the dead deer in the holes and put chips on top of them, and dead deers and chips. So we started this process a long time ago. So when the opportunity came to actually do this composting operation, it was also, I want to add, I'm jumping around a little bit, it was in our 20-year plan, our solid waste management plan, and we never did do it in our 20-year solid waste management plan. We did put a 10-year solid waste management plan together, and we had it also in that, and that's when we started to put this whole process, this pilot process together. And we took that information that we had and the history of the problem with roadkill as far as an early composting method, and we brought it into our system. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on that with history. So from a regulation standpoint, you can't go to incinerators, you can't go to landfills, nobody wants it. And also the people trucking it to the landfill, they don't want to step on it either when they're tarping their trucks. So I just wanted to make sure Angie touched a little bit on that. And I might be jumping ahead of you, Ange. I'm just going back. I wrote some notes down when you were talking earlier. on some things that I wanted to ask you about, for you to expand on a little bit. But the inspection of the wood, I know you did talk a little bit about it. And also the food waste, how important it is to watch everything that's being tipped and dumped, and a reminder of where this finished product is going. That's why it's really important to watch everything. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I talked a little bit about our onboarding process when we're educating people who are going to be bringing the food waste to us. And that's, again, part of the process of taking a tour, learning things, explaining to them we're going to be there to supervise your load as you deliver the food waste so that it's always inspected. We want to make sure that there are no contaminants. And if there are trace rubber bands or hair nets or kitchen gloves or things like that, we want to have accountability with that partner to be able to trace what went wrong and assist them if they need further training for their cafeteria or their kitchen, if they need more signage, posters, stickers. We want to be able to support them so that they're successful. Every single load of material that comes to our facility, whether it is yard waste or trash or electronics or food waste, is inspected as it's received so that we understand what material is flowing through our site, and we can see and end any contamination as it may be happening. And I have a couple slides later on, Charlie. I hope I didn't gloss over that question for you.
No, you did not. No, I just want to make sure that they understand how, that you are going to get more than incidentals coming in if you don't watch it. Everybody's watching you. So here, I tell my employees all the time, people are watching you more than you're watching them. And that's because there's always something there. Not always, but a lot of times there's something there. And if they know you're not watching, then it becomes more frequent of a problem. So I just wanted to make sure that you did touch on that and how important all parts of this process is, including looking at everything that comes into your place to make sure that it's not going to be something that's going to hurt somebody or contaminate something such. You got to remember, this is going on people's tomato plants. So I wanted to make sure everybody realized how important that part is. A lot of places, they don't do that, right? Because it is an expense. It does add to the labor of the project. But I believe, and I know Angie does, because we talk about it often, that if you're going to do something, especially when it comes to something that people are going to be eating or touching, you know what I mean? It should be exactly what you're advertising it to be. And we want to be assured of that. So we take those extra steps, those extra costs, and we make sure it is. So I just wanted to point out how important that really is. That's extremely important to us. Or else, if we didn't do that, then I would not certainly support this this operation for sure.
Thank you so much, Charlie. There's a lot of value there in what you said. As part of this process and educating people that it is so important, and we're really committed to creating the best composts possible because we want to see the program succeed, and we want to excel at it. We don't just want to succeed, we want to excel at it and really be a leader. So thank you for sharing those comments. And I'm going to keep pushing on. We still have a lot of content for you, but this is showing the startup cost for our pilot project. And I want to give you some background about this because we did invest extensively in creating a composting pad, an area where the food can be mixed and placed on an impermeable surface to reduce any runoff or stormwater concerns. A large portion of this came from the consultation fees with O2 Compost. Again, they designed our system, they sourced all of the equipment, they provided extensive staff training for us. And we also had to install a utility pole, which was one of the larger expenses to this project, to be able to get electricity to run those zones automatically. We already owned front end loaders, we already owned a scale, we already owned the site where we're doing this. So those are not included in this cost of $42,000. I do want to add here that 50% of those expenses were reimbursable through the Municipal Solid Waste Reduction and Recycling grant program with DEC. So it's a big number, it's not a huge number, and I don't want it to scare you off because the agency was able to recoup half of those costs through available funding, which I'll continue to talk more about. But the larger commentary here is that the agency did not really initiate this program motivated by financial gains. We did not set out to earn $1 million per year on this program. We were following our mission as a public benefit corporation, and we saw the potential to save money on waste disposal costs and on trucking and on fuel. We saw the social benefits of composting and how it would add value to our education program. And we wanted to establish a program that was going to be financially self-sustaining. So we set all of our user fees to a break-even model where we would be able to cover our costs and receive some revenue from the sale of compost and from the revenue from the materials being brought to our facility. So I just wanted to add that here. And over the next few years, the program continued to grow and expand, and we saw a lot of success. In this next chart, you'll see quickly the tonnage that we did per year just kept doubling. So in 2014, we did 240 tons. The next year, we did 670 tons. And the next year, we did almost 1,300 tons of food scraps. So the success and the public participation that we saw in this program was off the charts. There are businesses that wanted to compost with us, restaurants, cafes, schools. The program continued to grow. And I want to comment a little bit about some of the changes in our fee schedule during this time. In 2012, our trash tipping fee was $85 per ton, and we set the food waste tipping fee at $50 per ton. And we believe that that difference would incentivize people to want to separate their food and bring it for composting. And in 2013, the tipping fee for trash actually increased, and the agency responded by lowering the food waste tipping fee again to $30 per ton, believing that that difference would really incentivize participation. And then in 2014, we lowered the tip fee one more time to $20 per ton, which is the fee we still currently charge. And you can see in this graph how the program just took off from there. So little commentary about those growing pains and a couple lessons that we learned about hitting that Goldilocks zone where the public could really participate and start seeing the value of bringing the food waste. So there's a lot of growth there, and we started to outgrow the system that we originally designed. So we again asked the Department of Environmental Conservation to expand our permit modification, which the department was extremely supportive of. And I just want to, comment on that the Department of Environmental Conservation is extremely supportive of composting initiatives. So don't let, some of the complexities of launching this program be a barrier to you having that dialogue with your regulators, because they want to see you succeed. Virtually overnight, they expanded our permit to accept 2,000 tons per year. And we added the mortality composting zone, as we already discussed. And we increased the number of aerated static piles from 5 to 12. So now we had 12 zones. Again, each zone can handle 200 cubic yards of material. 12 blowers, those are the specifications on all the equipment that we use. In case you wanted a little bit more detail there, I wanted to include a slide like this. And here's the configuration of all 12 of those zones. So you can see we can mirror the 6 zones on each side and add more or take them off to suit our needs and to suit the loads that we see every day. So it's not very common that all 12 zones are going all at once. I don't think we've ever had all 12 zones going all at once, but a considerable improvement to our site and the amount of food that we're able to take. So the site expanded from a 40-foot by 90-foot area to a 90-foot by 120-foot area. So very much so doubled our operation. And since then, we've become a fully established organics recovery facility. In recent years, we've been able to really reap those benefits of the environmental impact of the program and the social value of the program, and we're continuing to see all of those benefits, so much so that we've even gone beyond the call of duty of you know, just being a leader in our community. But like I said, we like to share our process with other municipal leaders so that they can see the steps that we did and the process that we have. And we think our project is a great model program, and it's easy to replicate this program. We've provided mentorship for the town of Bethlehem, the town of White Plains, Cortland, the village of Scarsdale, Columbia County, Westchester County, Orange County, the list goes on and on. So as our director mentioned in the beginning, if anyone's interested to come into our site when all of the COVID-19 scares are over, we would welcome you to come and see for yourself the program that we've been able to build. So last year we did 4,600 tons of food scraps, and we sold 1,700 tons of finished compost. And this is a slide I'm really excited to share with you. So in the beginning of our conversation, I talked about how much waste we have in Ulster County. We typically send 15 tractor trailer transport trucks every day to the landfill in Seneca Meadows, which is 480 miles round trip. So by composting this material on site, last year alone, we took 132 of those tractor trailer trucks off the road. They would have traveled 63,000 miles and consumed over 12,000 gallons of diesel. So that is the pollution prevention and the conservation that we're able to see here in Ulster County just last year because of this program. So you can also see that reduced 127 metric tons of CO2 and over 300,000 kilograms of methane, which are both very potent greenhouse gases. You can see here on this chart, just looking at the last 3 years and the breakdown of the environmental benefits that we've seen from the program. So past 3 years, we've done over 11,000 tons of food. We've created over 4,700 tons of compost, and we've eliminated 320 tractor trailer trips to the landfill, conserving 148,000 miles, 30,000 gallons of fuel, and a tremendous amount of pollution prevention. Something I always like to share is the carbon dioxide greenhouse gas equivalent of some of these things. So by composting this material, it's actually the greenhouse gas equivalent of removing 4,000 cars off the road, or powering 2,500 homes for a year, or planting 24,000 acres of forest. So the environmental benefits of composting cannot be understated in this way. I also wanted to provide you with some of the financial background about the benefits that we're starting to see, you know, years out from this program. So this is from our composting O&M, and it's breaking out, just looking at the last 3 years, you can see we have revenues from tipping fees from the food waste being delivered. We have revenues from compost sales, and over the last 3 years, we've seen almost $400,000 in revenues from the program. That goes without saying, we obviously have expenses to maintain this program. We have staff that are involved. We have repairs and maintenance, as Charlie alluded to. Equipment breaks down, you need to repair it. Am I hearing from Tracy?
Yeah, your slide is not fully on. It's in the middle. So if you can move the slide, finish advancing to the compost O&M, please. Yeah.
Oh, maybe I had a bad internet signal. Are you able to see it now?
No, we're in between two slides.
I see it okay.
I see it okay.
You might be having an internet signal error.
I see it okay.
I'm so sorry. We're all trying to work out with these Zoom meetings how best to continue with these meetings, but it sounds like a few folks can see the slide successfully. So again, this presentation is being recorded, and if you'd like, I can also make the presentation available to you. If you've had trouble viewing any slides, I apologize for that.
Thank you.
So are you able to hear me well still? Am I going too fast, or am I cutting out?
I think it's fine, Ange.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, you know, our Our O&M is actually updated monthly, so you can see some of the expenditures that we have. So again, for that same time period of over the past 3 years, we have had over $250,000 worth of expenses related to the program. So our net operating revenue is a positive fund balance there. Our comptroller actually plans out the capital costs of equipment purchases over the span of the equipment. So you can see that is kind of chipping away at some of the some of the net operating revenues there. And we also put in for a lot of grants that cover, again, 50% of our costs, with a lot of different things are covered by the state or by other programs. And that also helps us sustain this program. But again, I just want to reiterate, our motivation for this program was not necessarily financial gain. It was, being able to manage the food waste in a sustainable way that created an end product that could be used and sold. And we still see the potential. And I really believe as the program continues that we will only see more cost benefits to this analysis. And I apologize, I can't give a more in-depth analysis of this chart, as I'm not an accountant, but it's good. We're able to financially sustain the program. And again, we set all of our user fees on a break-even model so that we can make sure to continue this program in the future. Again, when we started the program, we had some of this equipment already. We had the weigh scale, we had the front end loaders, but I wanted to show a slide about some of the various equipment that you would need on a composting site. And Charlie, I welcome you to correct any information or add anything on here, but you're going to need equipment to grind the wood waste. It's optional if you want to screen that finished product, you might need that. Some sites have proprietary equipment to build a pile or to turn and mix it. There's a lot of fancy equipment now to further control odors, like creating a compost cover or a compost blanket. So not everything on this slide is absolutely necessary, but I wanted to give you a scope of what some of the equipment purchases might look like. Bagging, we are now embarking on a mission to start to improve the distribution of our product by bagging it. So we recently worked with the County of Ulster to secure a bagging machine and supplies. So we're really excited about that. But you're going to need tools. You're going to need a temperature probe. You're going to need shovels. You want to make sure that your operators have personal protective equipment like hard hats and boots. And even fire suppression equipment is something that you should absolutely plan for and have a plan for if a large pile of wood waste is steaming or something like that. What are you going to do? So these are all expenses that you might want to look at as part of your feasibility study or as part of your business plan. And Charlie, do you have anything to add here?
Hey, Ange. So I just want to jump back up to some earlier things that you talked about when we talked about inspection, wood, deer compost, 3-to-1. Can we talk about, and you may be talking about it, I don't know. I didn't read your agenda going into this, but I want to make sure we talk about the compostable products. And I also want to make sure we talk about the regulations and piles and distance of piles and stuff, and the air distribution of the piles and what our piles are. So I don't know, you may be talking about, I know we talk about compostable products all the time, and I'm sure that's on your list to talk about. So I don't want to jump ahead of you either, but I want to make sure we do hit some important things. And one of the important things is the regulations on the piles. I want to, since you're on that area right now, talking about that particular stuff, maybe you could touch a little bit on the piles, the distance of the piles, and how our piles are, the distribution of the air in the piles, so if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yep, when you're managing a composting site, you want to make sure that you are, you have a good understanding of any applicable zoning codes or regulations about storing material on site. For wood waste in particular, you can have any piles that are over 25 feet high and they cannot exceed 30 feet wide at the base. Those piles should be triangular, and that's also for fire suppression. And if you have multiple stockpiles of yard waste or wood waste, they have to be 10 feet spaced apart from each other, and also 10 feet from the closest outbuilding or other pile. Do you have any want to add to that at all, Charlie?
No. I thought it was 30 feet high, Ange, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I thought it was 30 feet. I'm probably wrong on that. Sometimes when we look at numbers, sometimes we get confused a little bit, so I'm probably wrong. I think it's important to manage your piles right, and I also want to talk about the piles that are on the pile, Ange. So you know, so you get the proper distribution of air. What are we comfortable with on our piles? Of course I know that answer, but I like listening to you. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So again, he's asking about the construction of each pile. So we would have 8 inches of wood chips on top of the pipes, and followed by that, this actual height of the pile could be anywhere from 5 to 8 feet high. The active zone really shouldn't exceed about 8 feet high. You'll see a little bit of reduction as that material breaks down and composts. And then on top of that pile, we're going to cap it off again with another 6 to 8 inches of more wood chips or finished compost as a biofilter. So I'm happy to show more diagrams. I feel like that's a really specific question though. So maybe we should wait to dive a little bit deeper if they do have specific questions about that.
And I also, Ange, want to talk about real quick, and I'm sure you will, earlier on, our engineering, our engineering plans and the information that we gave the DEC to expand, you know, was 30 on, 30 off. We actually changed that and had some success with that. So would you talk, I don't know if you were planning on talking about that, Ange, but I definitely want to make sure we do hit on that, because I think that was really an important piece of this, as far as especially our last test results that we just got on our compost. And I also want to talk about, you know, how important it is to be able to sell the compost. That's, you know, so you could have a great operation making the compost, but if you're not selling it, you know, then, you know, that's the second part of it. That's equally important. So I don't know if you were planning on touching on any of that stuff.
I just want to jump in because I want to make sure we have enough time for questions on our end. I really appreciate your time, and I know you guys have a ton of expertise. We're just trying to, you know, dip our toe into this, so we're not sure. I know we don't know what we don't know as far as the technical questions. So Charlie, I appreciate that you have a ton of knowledge on there, but we're just not ready, I don't think, to delve into that level of detail.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Claudia. And yeah, we can circle back around to any of those technical or in-depth questions that you might have. I am looking at the clock, realizing now we've been sharing content with you for about an hour, and we want to get to a point where we can answer any questions that you might have. So I want to try to finish up really, really quickly. But again, these are the funding opportunities that are out there. There's a lot of money in the pot statewide for projects like this. My personal position as a recycling coordinator and as an educator is funded by the Municipal Waste Reduction Recycling Program. So 50% of my personnel costs and my supply costs for education are reimbursable to the state. And any equipment purchases or facility upgrades related to the composting project are largely eligible for 50% reimbursement through the state through the same program. DEC also had a food scrap reduction recycling grant recently that runs on a 3-year cycle, where those other grants are on a rolling basis or on an annual basis. So that will hopefully be available again in another couple years. Climate Smart Communities Grant Program, the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, or P2I, has a great community grants program that will fund up to $20,000 for projects. That does also includes personnel costs. So there's a lot of funding out there to offset some of the costs that you might have in starting a program. And then really quick, I want to just touch on some of these things, as I call them, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we share a lot of successes, but we want to make sure to also communicate the challenges that come with dealing with lots of food waste. And the good news is that a well-managed facility can control the odors, the vectors, the runoff, or other nuisances that may be problematic in large-scale composting. You have to have a proactive approach. You have to have consistent management and really make that commitment to using the best practices possible to control and prevent any odors. because the bad news is, you know, we're dealing with food waste. Odors are imminent, right? Food is highly putrescible. It's very high in moisture. It's attractive to pests. So you need to be ahead of the curve and doing everything possible before those issues ever become a problem. But remember, the good news is that you can do a lot to prevent them. And then I call this the good, the bad, and the ugly. The ugly is when the public complains about odors, it adds a lot of negative stigma about food waste composting. So you want to stay ahead of that. You want to take complaints seriously and be sure to manage the public's expectations and respond to your neighbors when they do have complaints about that. So you can see our closest neighbor here is about 500 feet behind our composting facility is the Bridge Authority here at the Kingston-Rhinecliff Bridge. And so we try to build a really good relationship with them. When your neighbors are on the side of the prevailing wind, really close density to you, you want to make sure that you are doing everything and meeting their expectations for how you're going to be handling your operation. And we've talked a lot about contamination. I'm going to beat this to a horse because these are the things that you see. You see utensils, aluminum foil, straws, these things that put a burden on your site, and they have to be either removed during the screening process as things are being delivered, or they have to be removed on the back end when you're screening that finished product. Either way, it is staff, it is time, it is safety. So you want to try to get ahead of those things and have a plan to do it as quickly as possible. Here are some pictures. I mean, we've seen it all, especially with community events or festivals. They are very prone to having contaminants, or any program that doesn't have a robust plan to educate its participants and have good signs. You want to be able to get ahead of this and enforce it if necessary. It's very uncommon that we would reject a load completely unless it's really something that we can't sort through very effectively. We didn't get to talk too much about compostable packaging, but that's another decision that you would make, is if you would include compostable packaging in your program. We see a lot of products out there called eco-friendly or biodegradable or plant-based, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of greenwashing when it comes to compostable packaging, and those items have not been tested scientifically to ensure that they fully disintegrate. And that's why we only accept BPI certified products that have been scientifically tested for disintegration and scientifically tested to prove that composting them will have no adverse effects on the finished product. So you may want to continue your education about compostable products and if you want to use them, because you know, we believe that they do increase participation in the program, especially for schools, for community events. They play an important role in managing and diverting as much food waste as possible. But we just have really strict rules about who can bring them to us and what types of products we will allow in that program. Composting is the law, effective January 1st, 2022. It will be a statewide law, but we've actually passed a little bit more comprehensive law here in Ulster County. So we have waived that distance requirement. So whether or not you're 25 miles to the nearest composting site in Ulster County, everyone, no matter how far away from the recycler you are, you'll be required to compost. Our law also includes schools, assisted nursing facilities, and hospitals, because we really feel like we have the capacity here and the robust education program to be able to do it safely. And our law here in Ulster County also goes below 2 tons per week. So there's an implementation period over the next 4 years where that will go down to 0.5 ton per week. Education, so important. I have a few slides in here. We provide resources to the public so they can learn about composting at home, or if they have questions about where else to bring it. So even if they don't want to bring it to our site, we can provide them with resources about other sites and other composting programs. There are 4 total composting sites here in Ulster County. We are the only permitted site, and we are one of the only publicly owned sites. So facility tours, again, you might want to open your door, because we really believe that this approach to come see for yourself what we're doing here is adding a lot of value to our community, and it's helping people answer those questions about buying the compost that's made from food, or if they have odor complaints, we want to welcome them to come for a tour and they can really see the value of what it is that we're doing. So education, welcoming the community to be a part of it is really important. We do a lot of workshops. That's me and our recycling educator, Melinda. We do a lot of composting workshops. So the program's added a lot of value to the education that we can do. And we believe that teaching youth is also really important because they bring those things home with them to their families, and they get really excited about composting. And we've been able to come up with some pretty unique programs, related to our mission. There are, as I mentioned, other sites in the county. So there are residential drop-off sites. These are not managed by our facility, but residents have the option to go to their local town transfer station and deliver their food scraps if they don't want to compost at home. And this is really important because at our facility, it's only open to commercial partners. We do not allow residents or small quantities of food to be delivered because of the nature of our operation. We have a lot of large trucks going around on our site. Looking to the future, we're always looking to get better at what we're doing. We recently acquired some land that's adjacent to our facility with hopes of expanding the program again in the future. So stay tuned for that. And there's a couple resources here I want to bring to your attention, especially for the planners or the policymakers on the call. I really suggest a lot of these resources that you can take a look at. If you want to learn more about our specific program, we have some videos of our pilot project up on YouTube. You can visit our website and learn more about our program. And without further ado, thank you so much for your attention and your time and your interest in learning about our program. And we're eager to answer any questions that you folks have, and always eager to partner with other municipal leaders looking to compost. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you to your colleagues as well. I am the chair of the Environmental Concerns Committee on the Board of Supervisors. We have a Board of Supervisors in Warren County, and I'm pretty sure that everybody that's on the call appreciates the environmental and social benefits of trying to do our own composting facility. So I'm really excited to see that it looks to me like it's somewhat feasible and doable. We're a pretty small county, and we don't have any kind of, we obviously don't have a public authority that's working on our behalf, but we do some of the things that you mentioned at the very beginning. And I would love to have a copy of your presentation. I know you had some really great resources listed there. And I did write down some questions, and there are other questions in the chat room. I wanted to just, if I can, if Kevin Hajas is still on, I know that you might have questions from a logistics standpoint that are more knowledgeable than any of the rest of us. Kevin is our superintendent of DPW, so he has already been working on some of our solid waste management issues at the county level, but we also have towns who have their own transfer stations. So I liked your little thing at the end about how we could do residential collections at the transfer stations for our residents, and then maybe, bring that to a centralized location. But again, I want to say thank you so much, and I think that we would love to take you up on the opportunity for mentorship from you guys if you are willing to do that in the future. And I do want to kick it over to Kevin if you have any questions, Kevin.
Thanks, Claudia, and thank you for the presentation. It was phenomenal. I think my biggest questions, and Claudia knows this, the county itself does not have any type of facility or location to do this. We have a couple, areas around the county that we use. We call them our sand pits. We don't use them as sand pits anymore. We do a lot of mulching at those areas. We actually, anytime we have storm damage, tree damage, we bring it there, we stockpile it, and then typically, because nobody in this county has a tub grinder, we all have chippers, but we typically have a vendor come in and do our tub grinding for us, and then we just stockpile the wood chips there. We don't take in any food waste. We never have. It's all the towns have their transfer stations. The county has never done that. We do the household hazardous waste days, as Claudia knows, we do them every year. they've worked out well. We do 2 towns every other year, and then an event in 1 town the opposite year, just because we don't get enough people coming in. I guess the biggest thing to me is this will have to be something from the Board of Supervisors, but some of the questions that came up, I'm concerned about, the leachate material. You said any runoff. What are you doing with runoff? Where is it being collected? Are you testing it? What happens to that runoff? Is it contaminated? What do you guys do with that?
Sure. I'm going to ask our director to address that question because my knowledge of it is a little bit limited. But again, my understanding is the reason why we've constructed that concrete pad underneath the pile is so that it's an impermeable surface, so that minimizes any groundwater contamination. And Tim, I welcome you to add to anything that your knowledge may be a little bit beyond mine of this.
Sure.
So Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Charlie said he'll address that.
So so everything is controlled. It has to be according to the regulations. And like it's not just so you know, Ange, our dreams are to go to concrete, but currently it's blacktop that we have under there because it was cheaper at the time. It still is actually. So we do control a lot of all of the runoff. Everything is bermed around it, and we do have Anjo, it's 800 yards. We try to keep a comfortable number on the chips on site, Ange, because we don't know how fast things are going to grow as far as food waste coming in or how fast it's going to die. We do know we always use it, and it's always been valuable to us. So to answer your question, any runoff that we have is controlled through berming and also wood chips that we have there, which is also introduced to the pile. Is it hazardous? No, it's not. It's all good stuff, and it all has a value to it. The composting process. So it's controlled. It's not contained in any underground tanks or anything like that. There, like our leachate is at our transfer station or our oil water separators. It's controlled right there on site through berms and wood chips, and it's introduced to the pile. So I hope that's helpful.
It is.
We also don't add any water to the composting process because the food inherently has enough moisture to kickstart the biology in the composting process. So we're not adding truckloads of water that would only exacerbate that concern about stormwater runoff. And those were the recommendations on our site from our regulators. And in the process of your site development, you may take other recommendations from your regulators, what's the best way or where to put berms. Again, the department's really cooperative. In my experience, has been very supportive of these programs. They want to see you be successful. So those are great questions. Thank you for that great, important question. And I hope that helps answer some of your question at least.
It does. Thank you. I guess my other question.
I just want to jump in real quick just to let you know. So year to date, we're about 700 tons up on food waste. And I did meet with the DEC yesterday. They were here for about 3.5 hours. We rode our entire site, and we got an incredible report from him. So we are doing something right. We are controlling it, and we're maintaining no runoff off site, off the footprint of the composting area. So I just wanted to point that out to you.
That's great.
You have to definitely keep your eye on it, though. You know what I mean? You have to stay with it all the time.
Do you guys expect to definitely go to concrete, or you guys are still going to stick with asphalt for the time being?
I would love to. Here's the thing, right? With the heat from the compost, the blacktop tends to get soft and break up. We do have it thick, and we did use the best concrete according to our contractor that put it in. We do a lot of stuff in-house and like build those dog houses that you see. Everything is done pretty much, even our own floor repairs with concrete is all done in-house. But the blacktop, and we don't do in-house. As being a guy from a DPW, you would understand why we don't have pavers and stuff like that.
No.
So, but we did use the best according to our contractor who does a lot of blacktop, and we did use the best type of blacktop that he recommended to do the job. So we would like to go to concrete. Concrete's the best.
Okay. My last question, I guess, is because I know there's a bunch of other questions people want to ask. You guys have your own tub grinder on site. Is that what you use, or do you allow the towns to bring in material to you as well?
So
that's the other question.
Two parts to that answer. So it's not a tub grinder. It's a horizontal grinder, a Peterson grinder, and we grind for the towns either A, at a cost, which is we charge $1,500 a day, which is really cheap, or we will grind for free if they deliver the chips to us, but they still have to pay for the fuel. So I'll give them an operator and a grinder. You pay for the fuel and you deliver the chips. If we have, because we have a lot of really experienced operators, I will even supply an operator to run the excavator, because a lot of towns don't have excavators. They don't have, some of them have loaders, some don't have so good of loaders. So we will do whatever we can to assist the towns. I mean, I don't deliver equipment there, of course not, except for my Peterson.
Okay. Thank you.
We have-
Claudia,
And just so you know, our Peterson uses about 22 to 26 gallons. It's, you know, it's got a cat engine, and it's a real pig when it comes to fuel. So it's about 22 to 26 gallons an hour. So it does eat a lot of fuel.
Charlie, how much did you guys pay for that?
At the time, we paid about $439,000 for that, Tim, back in
Ooh.
04. They're about 600,000 now.
Yeah.
But you know,
It's the Peterson, it's a 4700B that we have, and it's actually a land clearing machine. It can take up to about 3-foot diameter logs.
Right.
You know, use something like that if you want to put in a major, you know, subdivision or something like that. It was originally purchased by a previous executive director prior to me, to look at grinding some C&D. That was the original intent, but it was never really used for that. So we went into a different direction with it, and we decided to use it for our compost.
Well, I definitely think at $1,500 a day, you guys are doing it at a real reasonable price, because we have a contract with a vendor who's doing it for $3,500 a day for us.
that's cheap too.
Oh, I know. Yeah, he's a
And,
local guy.
Because a lot of towns tried to look to see if they could find something better, and the prices around here were coming to $5,000 to $6,000 a day, and
Yeah.
they still had to pay for the fuel also, and any
Mhm.
damage. You know, that's the other thing. A lot of these towns, they don't maintain the piles.
Right.
We had some town that had a block of steel, a 56-pound block of steel that caused unbelievable damage to my machine. So because they're not watching what these piles, what's being put into these piles. That's a
Right.
real concern.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
That-
definitely.
That's one of my biggest concerns too, is the only way we're going to be able to make money selling a good product is if we have good stuff going in on the front end. And we don't have right now towns who are protecting or managing carefully their wood waste. And they don't have the money to spend $3,500 to grind it up for us. And
Right.
we don't, I mean, I'm not looking at $600,000 in the county budget to buy one of those things, especially not right now when we're looking at austerity measures, given our complete lack of revenue from the, our sales tax revenue from the COVID thing is killing us.
Could I
Sorry,
touch on
that's
that for a minute? Can I touch on that for a minute? I wouldn't be doing that either. 600,000 is a lot of money, right? So you do things gradually, right? Slowly. And you measure them out, right? You have to really measure what you're doing out. So if you guys got to the point where you guys were doing 5,000 to 6,000 tons of food waste, long term, it might be something you might want to consider,
Right.
especially the beings that there are grants out there through the DEC where that
Right.
600 can turn into a $300,000 bill, not a $600,000 bill. So those are things you want to consider. But listen, we started off 39 tons, right, in 2012, and we're up to almost 5,000 tons. So that's when we start looking at investing into equipment and getting that 50% reimbursement. So when you're going into this, listen, that's a good deal, 3,500, and that's kind of where you want to be. So I agree with you 100%. But I also want to say this, right? If you're going to do it right, I agree with you also. Do it right, right? I always say, if you're going to sell lemonades, right, you gotta buy lemons. You can't just do it with sugar and water. So if you're going to do it right, do it right.
And then thank you. I want to do it right. And I want to know who you guys have set up as partners in the very beginning when you did the pilot program. Who can we get as a partner that will do this right with us?
So I don't know what you mean by partner. When Angie talks about partners, she's talking about our customers that bring in food waste and stuff.
Yeah.
And we give them information on what we need the product to be that they're bringing to us in order to qualify for that rate. So in the towns with their shared service agreements with us, those are our partners. So when you say partners, I don't know.
Well, I definitely would think that our towns will be partners with us, especially on the wood waste side. But the food waste, are you looking at like we do have one college, we have a SUNY campus, but
Good
they're
start.
looking, I think they're going to do their own food waste composting. So I don't think they're going to need us.
Claudia, the Pollution Prevention Institute has a searchable database on their website where it's called their Organic Resource Locator, where you can type in your zip code and it will generate an interactive map of the large food waste generators within a certain radius of your zip code. You can market your program to I would recommend to the large generators, because that's where you're really going to see the volume that's going to make it work. And it's also very successful at town transfer stations where residents are putting their food into the bins. But, you know, I want to encourage you to think big, because the large volume is really what makes the program financially sustainable. So you can market this program to restaurants, to grocery stores, think like bakeries, that like organizations or food establishments that would have a very clean stream, right? Like a bakery is largely like eggshells and coffee grounds and stale bread. So, you know, identifying those large food scrap generators in your community within a certain radius and listing them, right? And trying to build that contact list of trying to build a stakeholder engagement process. What might that look like to say, hey, we're thinking about doing this, like what would it mean for you if we could do this? But I just wanted to bring that to your attention, the Organic Resource Locator on P2I's website.
I will definitely check that out. And that's another thing that you brought up just now about what would it mean to them. I'm curious, we have an incinerator nearby, so I feel like a lot of our waste generators send their waste to this incinerator, not to the landfill. So I'm wondering I don't know what their tipping fees are, so that we would understand what's a reasonable amount to charge them that would still bring them value to bring their waste to us rather than just send it to the incinerator.
And you would have to look at, you know, different models to see what your break-even cost would be. I can't really comment on that for your particular unique situation or the types of equipment you readily have, or et cetera. But, you know, when this program first started back in 2012, there was a lot of value to the business in publicity, and in the recycling coordinator at the time created decals and stickers and resources that business could put in their window or write on their menu, so their customers know we care, we compost. And that does add a lot of value, because consumers are aware of environmental issues and they do want to be part of programs and support businesses that are doing the right thing for the environment. So those are strategic marketing things that can also make it work for businesses and be attractive to businesses. And, you know, you should also look at that cost differential. I talked about how when our tipping fee was $100, we were only charging $20 for food. And so for a business where 90% of their waste is food, then they might not need 2 dumpsters every week. You know, they might only need a small tote for garbage every week. And so you can see the cost savings and the cost avoidances and break it out for them in that way. So I think that there's a lot of potential to show that value, both from a marketing standpoint and from the cost savings and the environmental savings.
And we have tons of environmental activists in the area right here on this call too. So I'm sure they could help us with getting the word out and marketing using that aspect. And there are a bunch of communities, including Warren County, who are climate smart communities. So we could even kind of leverage that side of things. I know there are some other electeds on here. There's Harrison Freer from the town of Queensbury, Brad McGowan, Ben Driscoll, our two county people as well. Do you guys have any questions?
And you may not have questions readily, but, you know, I just want to speak on behalf of the agency to continue this conversation offline if you do have questions. Again, we're always open to share our process, and you know, we think it adds a lot of value for us as well to be able to share our process and answer questions for our peers. So we can take a couple more questions if you want, or wrap up. We're open to that.
Okay, I see that.
If I could just say, Claudia, thank you to Tracy for
Yeah.
setting this up. It's been very valuable to me. This is in my job jar. You guys have put out a lot of good ideas. I look forward to getting a copy that Tracy said we would of this presentation. I have a colleague in Oregon who's all over me for not moving forward with composting quick enough. So there's a lot of potential here, and thanks for Tracy and thanks for Angie for this great presentation.
Hey, Claudia.
Yeah.
I had posted on Zoom group chat how bi-county or tri-county initiatives might work.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that we can approach. We have lots of good partners already, like Washington County and Hamilton County, even Essex County and Saratoga County. I think that could make a big difference, because I don't think there's anything in any of our counties. There's something in Saratoga Springs, but I'm sure there's a lot that we could do there. And I see Bill Collins on here from the city. The city has been doing a lot of great stuff, our little city of Glens Falls, with their sustainability efforts. So I think that we could make this happen as a regional effort, not just our county.
Hey, Angie. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I
just
was
wanna
just
make
going to
sure-
say thank you to you guys and to Tracy for setting it up.
I just want to say, Ange, when we talk about partnering with places, the drop centers, have also been doing a little bit. I know they mentioned they had drop centers. So we have several drop centers here that are also taking in food waste. So I just didn't know if you wanted to mention that.
Absolutely. We have the 4 of the town recycling centers that will consolidate the food waste into a larger volume, and then they deliver that to various composting sites. As I mentioned, we have 4 composting sites county-wide. Not all that material does come to us, but we are partnering with one of those transfer stations. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity, because the fewer miles that have to be driven is always better when it comes to waste and recycling. And our regional effort is a really great conversation to have. We were also looking at regionalization. I don't know, Tim, if you want to comment briefly on Gus, but there's a lot of opportunities to join forces with your neighbors and make things happen that way. So,
and what Angie's referring to when she talks about Gus, we had an idea of getting together, Ulster getting together with Greene and Sullivan counties. So Greene, Sullivan, and Ulster, that gives you your Gus acronym, and creating one larger authority that would cover 3 counties. Greene County is a county department, and Sullivan County also has a county department for solid waste, whereas Ulster is a separate authority. We thought by getting together with those other 2 counties and creating one solid waste authority for all 3 counties, there's a lot of benefits, especially an economy of scale, that can be had. We did do a formal engineering study and as well as a financial study in those regards, and those were presented to all 3 legislatures last year, and between last year and the year before, and those ideas have sort of been pushed by the wayside for various reasons. I don't know if it's still going to come up for discussion in one or more of the counties, but right now it's pretty much at a standstill. But those discussions were taking place. So.
Okay. I mean, we have some other mechanisms that we could use. I'm thinking like soil and water. I know Jim Liebram was on the call for a little while. He's from our Warren County Soil and Water. So using that kind of partnership, I think maybe to set up some sort of regional thing. We also have a Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board that covers multi-county issues. So it's doable. And I'm encouraged by what I saw you guys to see your revenue expenses balance sheet be on the positive side, right? Pretty much from the get-go. That was exciting too.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's not just about the money. The money's how I'm going to be able to convince the other county policymakers that this is a good way for us.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, month to month, right, that P&L, that fluctuates depending on what your expenses are. So sometimes high expenses, sometimes low expenses. At the end of the day, you know, what you put in your pocket, you know, is very meager at best. So I just want you to know. So if it is about the money, that's the wrong business. So I just want to let you know that. That's been our experience.
I got you.
And there's a lot of money up front that you're putting up to get that small profit. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have, oh, Brad, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I just want to know what's the population of your county or counties that your waste is coming in from?
Great question. Thank you, Brad. So in Ulster County, we have about 180,000 residents, but only about 30% of our food waste comes from inside the county. We accept food waste from neighboring counties from Westchester, Dutchess, Sullivan, Putnam County. We even have some waste that's coming to us from New York City because, as I started out our conversation, we're one of the only large facilities in our region that contains material, and we open our doors to partners that can work that way. So the 4,600 tons a year that we did last year is not representative of the whole county. Again, only about 30% of that is coming from within the county, and our partners in our program are only commercial clients. So there's no residential drop off happening at our site. Those are large trucks, box trucks, dump trucks that are coming in with the food using our facility. So I hope that helps answer your question a little bit.
Well, yeah. So you said Ulster County is a lot of people mics are on, so it got a little gurglish there. You said 80,000 people in Ulster County, correct?
180,000.
All right, 88. Okay, and then then you say you have waste coming in from other counties that are participating with your partners. So take an average of people that you're thinking on there.
Well, we know exactly where all of our food waste comes from. That's part of our process and our when they weigh in and when they onboard with us. So I was explaining that only about 30% of the food waste that we process is from within our county.
All right, so 30% within the county.
Brad, I don't think it's about the population. It's about finding those high generating entities.
And that's what I'm trying to get to. I mean, we'd have to look into other counties in this, but you know, Ulster County and all the other counties down there, they're very large people that are heavily populated, you know, with restaurants and other things. So, I mean, I'm just trying to put things in my. It's a great program, and it was a really awesome presentation that you really put on there. And you know, it's really exciting to see the outcome of the product, because it's products that, you know, that I've dealt with my whole life, you know, especially in the construction, in that even though you don't do it that end, you know, it'd be interesting how, but the separation and the whole process. But I mean, I'm just looking at you definitely need the food, and I'm just trying to, you know, put this all together, you know, in my mind to how we're going to present it down the road there, Claudia.
You raise up some really interesting points too, because the demand for the finished compost product is an important piece to this. And compost has many uses and horticultural applications. It can be sold and marketed to landscapers, to farmers, to greenhouses. It has DOT applications for stormwater management and making berms and roadside ditches and compost blankets and compost socks. And it can be marketed to golf courses. It can be marketed to athletic fields. So there are a million different directions that you could zoom in on to market the back end of the operation. And any composting program that's successful needs to have both. You need to have the very large generators on the front end, like your grocery stores, your bakeries, your restaurants, your schools. And then you want to make sure that there is a local demand and that you can market that high quality product at a really affordable price.
Well,
I see
one
that-
of the other things I really liked is that you said you're bagging it. You know, you get a bagger in there, you weigh it out, you bag it, you have your seal on it, you know, you seal it and vacuum seal it, and bingo. I mean, it's amazing the outreach of the markets, because a lot of people don't need that, you know, that load. They just need a couple bags. And, you know, hey, you set things up with a Lowe's and a Home Depot and some of the other mom and pop shops that you know, the Agways and that is a local compost. I mean, it's endless of what can happen. So.
Yeah, you know, Brad, we had one time a couple of years ago, we had two individuals that came in together, and one was in a Mercedes, one was in a Volvo, and they actually lined their trunks with plastic, and they wanted to fill their trunks up with compost. So it makes me think of that. You know, this is why we need to have a bagging machine. You know.
I know when you mentioned
Terrible.
bagging, I said, what a great idea, because like I said, you could have the little store up front there, you know, people buying it direct right from you, you know. It's really endless, because I just know, I mean, if you drive by the Home Depots and that right now, I mean, you look at all their mulches and everything that came in over the winter. I mean, there's thousands of pallets, you know, stacked on top. This stuff is going to go out, and I mean, and that's just the wood mulch. But I mean, the compost. Why wouldn't you want more natural?
We have several large home improvement stores, big box stores and ag centers within a 15-mile radius of our facility. So I just want to comment on that, because the market is drenched with mulch products and bagged compost products. And you're absolutely right, Brad. But we have multiple home improvement centers and big box stores located within 10 miles of us that are open, you know, 24/7 for compost sales. And here we are Monday through Friday, 8 to 3, right? So we can still manage to sell and market 2,000 tons a year of compost, which I think speaks volumes to our director of operations and the quality product that they are pushing out there. So even if you do see a lot of competitors, again, this is all stuff that you kind of want to try to have put into a marketing plan, so that you have that plan for how you're going to market it and who are your what are the outlets, and maybe you could partner with to have your product sold in Home Depot or something like that.
Hey,
So.
I would think that a local store would promote that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially like with the true your true values, you know, in the Ace Hardwares. I mean, this is it's really exciting. I'm glad I sat in.
I'm glad you're on board, Brad.
You know,
I see that there's Supervisor Leggett and also City Representative Jim Clark. Do you guys have any questions before I'm going to wrap us up on the question side?
I do, Claudia. This is Jim Clark. I appreciate your time and everyone's time here today. The city has a lot of leaves. We do leaf pickup during the course of the year. And I noticed that the component of leaves was very small part of the composting. Does it matter how much leaves are in that composting pile? The other question I have is, based on your proximity with Ulster County, I mean, certainly you're closer to some larger markets. You know, we're up in the Adirondacks, and you know, I guess that would all be part of the market study of how far we could go out with this. You know, if it would be a multi-county thing or stuff like that. It sounds like you're getting more product from out of Ulster County than you are from the county. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for your question. I want to address your question about the composition of leaves in our process. So we do not have a large volume of leaves that go into our process. So leaves tend to do a lot of wear on our grinding equipment. They can pass through, but really for aerated static piles and the method that we use, you really want to have those wood chips that are porous, and it's a woody biomass that provides really good structure in the pile so that that forced air can circulate throughout the material, because the wood chips do a lot. They're a bulking agent to add mass and density to the material, and they provide that structure for air to flow through the pile. So you really want to be looking at like wood chips as a primary bulking agent. And I would welcome our Director of Operations to add any other comments to that. You can use leaves to an extent, but you don't want to be using primarily leaves. And also your supply year round would be pretty seasonal to be using only leaves or a large volume of leaves. So they can go in the mix, but you really want to have that wood chip material to be able to absorb moisture and handle the food in a more sanitary manner.
So Ange, I would agree with that, right? Angie's right, we don't get a lot of leaves. And she's right again, they do cause wear on our grinder. We can grind even after flipping the teeth, figured two times, and it's about $1,000 to replace the teeth on it. So it's pretty expensive. So we don't encourage a lot of leaves. Leaves tend to be de minimis in our pile, which is fine. So, and also the same thing with grass. I mean, when you think about nature, right? Nature composes leaves all the time. So it's a fine material, but just for the grinding aspect of it, not so fine. And we don't really deal with a lot of that anyway. People aren't coming and paying $40 a ton, because we charge $40 a ton, right? $40 a ton, and $40 a ton, right? For brush.
Yeah.
For yard waste, people aren't really paying $40 a ton to get rid of leaves. That's for sure. They always find a neighbor or a bank that they can throw them down, or just keep them for worms so they can go fishing in their backyard. Brad, I would like to touch on something with you though. You did bring up some really good points, and I want to say this to you, that with the method that we use, I truly love it. I call it a rolling composting site. So that means if we grow, we just add pipes and blowers. If it falls down on us and we start to lose customers because they go somewhere else, which is fine. The goal is not to send this waste to a landfill. So that's fine. Then we just take blowers and pipes away. And I will say this to you also, one of the reasons why we've been really successful in growing is because we never turn anything away. There have been a lot of sites that actually, when they get to where they get to the point where they can't handle it, or there's a lot of rain, they start to turn it away, and then people just never go back. So people have to have faith that they can get rid of what they have on their truck so they can use their truck the next day. So we have a rule of thumb here. We never turn it away unless it's bad, then we will. But rest assured, if you have good food waste, we will always take it. I don't care what we have to do. We've had a lot of it come in at once, because you can't predict waste. Whether it's garbage, whether it's food waste, you just can't predict it. We will not turn it away. People have to have faith in you, your operation, and the fact that they can come there and they can off their truck. So, and the good news is right, if you fall down a little bit and you shrink, you just take the stuff away. So that's the good news. Pipes don't go bad, blowers don't go bad. You know what I mean? It's a really, really good process we have here. So Brad, I hope that's a little bit helpful for you if you have some concerns about investing into these things, and then what happens when you lose food waste. You just take pipes away.
I want
You're muted.
Oh, I just want to say, this is Tracy from the Zero Waste Committee, and I just want to volunteer our committee to start looking at where the big generators are in the region. So I'll bring that to our next meeting, or I'll send that around and see what the response is. Thanks. And thanks, Ulster County folks, you were great.
Good talking to you.
Tracy, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's organizing your group, and for carving out the time to take an interest in our story. And it's always great to connect with new people, and we have a lot of knowledge to share and a lot of resources to share. I will make the presentation available. I'll send it to Tracy, who can pass it along, and feel free to follow up with us with any questions that went unanswered today. And it's a long process of information gathering and kind of, getting a sense of what's out there, but hopefully you're feeling very inspired by our story, and we can continue the conversation in the future.
Angie, you have
Thank
me
you.
inspired. You did a great job.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Charlie.
Yes, thank you.
Really,
Absolutely.
really,
Thanks,
she-
Thank you, guys.